You know what people don't understand about relationships? Sometimes you have to think outside the box to fix what's broken. But apparently suggesting solutions makes you the bad guy. Even when your partner has been acting suspicious for months. I'm Evelyn. I'm 28. And I built my cleaning business from absolutely nothing. Started with just me, a bucket, and determination. Worked my way up to having employees and corporate contracts. That's where I met Wesley, this finance guy who worked late constantly, always acting like he was running the whole company or something. Wesley was 31, one of those guys who seemed stable on the surface but had this weird intensity about him, and not the passionate kind. More like he was always calculating something in his head. He'd stay late at his office building where my company cleaned, and I'd catch him watching me work. Not in a creepy way, just observing, like he was figuring me out. After about a month of these little encounters, he finally asked for my number. I wasn't wearing my ring that day because I'd been deep cleaning and didn't want to mess it up. See, I'd just gotten out of this really intense relationship that ended badly, and I needed time to sort through all that baggage. But Wesley seemed different from my ex, more controlled, more predictable. When he asked me out, I told him I'd think about it. Took his number, but didn't call for over a month. I needed to make sure I was completely done with my previous situation before jumping into something new. During that time, Wesley would always find reasons to chat when I was there, asking about my business, complimenting my work ethic. It was actually pretty sweet. Finally texted him one night when I was feeling lonely. We ended up talking for hours. He seemed genuinely interested in my entrepreneurial journey, asked thoughtful questions about my goals and dreams. We set up a date, and things progressed naturally from there. He invited me to his company's Christmas party that December, and I was excited to see him in his professional environment. That party should have been a red flag the size of Texas. I had a few drinks, open bar, and was having genuine fun for the first time in months. Wesley's colleagues, David and Antonio, were friendly guys, and when they started dancing, I joined them. Just dancing, having a good time, nothing inappropriate. But Wesley completely lost it. Yanked me away from the dance floor like I was some kind of possession, embarrassing me in front of everyone. Back in our hotel room, he went off about how I'd humiliated him and acted completely inappropriate. I was devastated. Here I thought we were having this amazing night together, and he was treating me like I'd done something terrible. I apologized through tears, even though every instinct told me I hadn't done anything wrong. I was just dancing with his friends at his company party, but he made me feel like some kind of slut for having fun. The next morning, I was still hurt and tried to talk to him about how his reaction affected me. That's when he pulled this manipulative move, said we'd never officially discussed being exclusive, like that somehow justified his jealous tantrum. But then when I got upset about the just dating comment, suddenly he wanted to make it official. The whole thing felt like mind games. I should have walked away right then, but I convinced myself he was just protective because he cared about me. I ignored every red flag waving in my face. What happened next still makes my head spin. Wesley became absolutely obsessed with the idea that I was cheating. And I mean obsessed. I couldn't go anywhere alone without getting interrogated like I was on trial. If I had to run business errands, he wanted detailed itineraries and where I was going, who I might encounter, exactly how long I'd be gone. The worst part was my work trips. My cleaning business required occasional travel for big commercial contracts, real opportunities that could seriously grow my company. But Wesley acted like I was planning secret hookups. He'd demand I drive home immediately after meetings, even if it meant traveling late at night when I was exhausted. Why can't you just come back tonight? He'd ask with this suspicious tone, what's so important about staying overnight? It was exhausting. I started turning down profitable contracts because dealing with his paranoia wasn't worth the hassle. My business began suffering, but he didn't seem to care about that part. The accusations got completely unhinged. He'd want to smell my clothes when I got home from work. He'd go through my phone constantly. Every text and every call log, every social media notification. He knew all my passwords and would randomly audit everything. But if I even glanced at his phone, suddenly I was being controlling and needed to learn to trust. One night really stands out. We were in bed around 2 a.m. after a nice evening together when his phone started ringing. Unknown number from our area code. He didn't answer the first time, and I didn't think anything of it. But when it rang again, he got this weird expression, almost like he was bracing himself. When he finally picked up, it was some young woman asking for Ray, obviously a wrong number. But Wesley's whole demeanor was strange. He seemed almost relieved, like he'd been expecting something worse. When she called back asking for Ray again, he was overly polite, calling her hun when he said goodbye. I mentioned it seemed odd. Why be so friendly with a random stranger calling at 2 a.m.? Wesley absolutely exploded, started screaming about how I didn't trust him, how I was always looking for reasons to accuse him of things. He threw this massive tantrum, threatening to end our relationship over a simple observation. His reaction was so extreme and defensive that it made me more suspicious, not less. Normal people don't lose their minds when their partner makes an innocent comment about a weird phone call. The next morning, he was still giving me the silent treatment. Made himself breakfast, but deliberately didn't make me any, which was petty and childish. When I tried to address his overreaction, he acted like I was the crazy one for thinking his behavior was extreme. Looking back, all his defensive reactions and erratic behavior should have been obvious signs, but at the time, I just wanted peace in our relationship. So I apologized and tried to move forward. After months of this exhausting cycle, Wesley suddenly proposed. I was shocked. We'd been having constant problems, and now he wanted marriage. But he seemed so sincere, so committed to changing. He promised the trust issues would stop, that he'd work on his insecurities, that marriage would give us both the security we needed. I said yes because I loved him and genuinely believed people could change. He seemed relieved and happy, and for a few weeks, things actually improved. He stopped checking my phone as obsessively, stopped interrogating me about every little thing. I thought we'd finally turned a corner, but it didn't last. The accusations came back, just more subtle this time. Instead of direct confrontations, he'd make little comments designed to make me doubt myself. That client seemed really interested in talking to you. You were gone longer than expected today. Your phone was face down when I walked in, hiding something. The worst part was how he'd twist my reactions. If I got frustrated with his suspicions, he'd say I was being defensive, and that innocent people don't get defensive. If I tried to reassure him, he'd claim I was overcompensating, which obviously meant I was hiding something. There was literally no winning. I suggested couples therapy multiple times, even found a therapist and scheduled appointments. Wesley agreed enthusiastically, seemed genuinely committed to working on our issues. But when the day came, he'd have some work emergency. Then the next appointment, another crisis. After 3 cancellations, I realized he had zero intention of actually going, but he'd still weaponize therapy in arguments, saying things like maybe you should talk to someone about your trust issues, or a therapist would tell you that your behavior isn't normal. He'd use the concept of professional help against me while refusing to participate himself. The engagement was supposed to be this happy period of planning our future, but instead it felt like walking through a minefield. I was constantly monitoring my own behavior, trying not to trigger his suspicions. I stopped having normal conversations with male clients. I stopped going out with friends because he'd grill me about who was there and what we discussed. I was losing myself trying to manage his insecurities, but I kept believing that once we were married, once he felt truly secure, everything would improve. The night everything fell apart started like so many others. I'd had a particularly brutal day dealing with a difficult client who was threatening to cancel a major contract. Came home exhausted and just wanted to unwind with some wine. Wesley was working late again, or so he claimed. I ended up drinking more than usual. The wine helped me relax, and for the first time in months, I could think clearly without Wesley's constant presence and suspicions clouding my judgment. That's when I started really analyzing our relationship patterns. I'd been reading articles online about relationships and communication, trying to understand why we kept having the same fights repeatedly. One piece discussed sexual compatibility and how crucial it was for long-term success. Got me thinking about Wesley's experience level compared to mine. My previous relationship had been incredibly passionate and intense. Wesley and I had decent chemistry, but it was different, more restrained, more careful. Sometimes I wondered if he felt insecure about that difference, if maybe that's where his jealousy originated. When Wesley got home, I was feeling philosophical and wine confident. I thought maybe if we could have a mature, adult conversation about our relationship dynamics, about our insecurities and needs, we could finally break through these trust issues that were destroying us. So I brought up the idea of exploring our relationship more openly, maybe addressing our different experience levels. I suggested we could consider a temporary open arrangement so we could both feel more confident and secure before marriage. I thought I was being mature and solution-oriented. I thought I was addressing the underlying problems in our relationship constructively, but Wesley's reaction was immediate and explosive. He didn't want discussion, didn't want to understand my perspective, just started talking about ending our engagement immediately. I tried explaining that I wasn't saying I wanted to cheat or didn't love him. I was trying to solve the problems we'd been having, trying to address his obvious insecurities in a productive way, but he wouldn't listen. Just kept saying we were done and he was leaving. It felt completely unfair. I'd been dealing with his accusations and paranoia for months, walking on eggshells, sacrificing friendships and business opportunities to make him comfortable. And the one time I tried having a genuine conversation about our future, he completely overreacted and bailed. Wesley moved out the next day, and suddenly I became the villain in everyone's narrative. He told his version to anyone who'd listen, that I'd asked for an open marriage so I could cheat without consequences. Conveniently left out months of his paranoid behavior, his controlling demands, his refusal to attend therapy, his family, who'd always been polite but distant, turned completely cold. His sister Carmen, who I'd actually gotten along with, started posting passive-aggressive social media updates about people who don't appreciate what they have, obviously directed at me. Even some of my own friends seemed to take his side. They knew about our fights. But Wesley had always been charming in public settings. He never let anyone see his paranoid, controlling side. So when he told them I'd requested an open marriage, they just saw me as selfish and ungrateful. What really hurt was that nobody asked for my side. Nobody wanted to hear about months of accusations, constant surveillance, the way he'd isolated me from friends and damaged my business with his demands. They just heard open marriage and decided I was the problem. Wesley took a job in another city, apparently some opportunity he'd been considering for months, but never bothered mentioning. Funny how he had backup plans ready to go. He collected his belongings while I was at work. Didn't even have the courtesy to face me directly. But the worst part was what he did with my things. Came home one day to discover he'd taken some of my clothes and personal items. When I texted about it, he claimed he'd only taken his own stuff. But I knew exactly what was missing, including expensive pieces I'd bought for special occasions. When I threatened police involvement, he finally admitted he'd accidentally taken some of my belongings, but claimed he'd already donated everything. Such a petty, vindictive move. This from the man who'd spent months accusing me of being untrustworthy. I took him to small claims court to recover the value. Had receipts, photos, proof of everything he'd stolen. Judge ruled in my favor, though it was only a couple $1,000s. The principle mattered more than money. I wasn't letting him steal from me and walk away clean. About 10 months after Wesley left, I got a call that changed everything. Carmen, his sister, crying and saying she needed to tell me something important. Apparently, Wesley had been cheating throughout our entire relationship. Carmen discovered this because Wesley's new girlfriend, some woman from his new job, had contacted her through social media. This woman had found text messages between Wesley and multiple other women, including conversations that dated back to when he and I were together. The girlfriend had investigated and uncovered evidence of Wesley's affairs going back years. She'd reached out to Carmen, hoping to find other women Wesley had been involved with. Trying to piece together his cheating timeline, Carmen was devastated. She'd defended Wesley to everyone, helped spread the story that I was the unfaithful one who'd destroyed our relationship. Now she realized Wesley had been projecting his own guilt onto me the entire time. All those accusations, all that paranoia about me cheating, it was because he was the one being unfaithful. All those late nights working, all those defensive reactions to simple questions, all those times he'd explode over innocent interactions, pure guilt and projection. Those random calls asking for Ray, turns out Wesley had been using fake names with his hookups. The woman calling that night was probably one of his side pieces who'd gotten confused about which number belonged to him. Carmen apologized extensively and said she'd been telling everyone the truth about Wesley's cheating. But damage was already done. I'd spent months being treated like the villain while Wesley played victim. His new girlfriend dumped him immediately after discovering his cheating history. She'd also reported some inappropriate workplace behavior to his employer. Wesley ended up fired and had to move back with his parents. Meanwhile, I'd rebuilt my cleaning business stronger than ever, learned to trust my instincts again, recognize red flags, understand that I didn't need to sacrifice my success and happiness to manage someone else's insecurities. Look, I'm not bitter about any of it. Wesley showed me exactly who he was, and I'm grateful I discovered it before we got married. His cheating, his lies, his manipulation, that was all his choice. I tried to save our relationship the only way I knew how, and if he couldn't handle an adult conversation about our future, then he wasn't right for me anyway. Some people still think I was wrong for suggesting an open marriage, but I know the truth. I was trying to fix something already broken by Wesley's lies and infidelity. I was attempting to address problems he'd created and then blamed on me. I don't regret anything. I'm successful, independent, and free from his toxic behavior. And Wesley, he's exactly where his choices led him. Alone, unemployed, living with his parents at 32, Sometimes karma really does handle things perfectly. The truth is, I was always too good for him anyway. I just needed him to show me who he really was so I could move on to something better. And that's exactly what happened.